Hi team! So today is September 8th, 2021, and we are moving right into the foresleeve for our Tudor situation, since that's the word that seems to apply to all of these shenanigans I've been getting myself into. There is one pattern piece for this. I say that before I actually look at the instructions again. I have made the Margot Anderson foresleeve in the largest size, so that should be fine. I am still considering using the Tudor tailor. Again, I just want to see where the differences are so that I can make some choices along the way. We're not really aiming for anything other than a completed outfit. So what's next in the Margot Anderson pattern manual is the foresleeve. Foresleeves. There will be two. I did find a length of the green. Huzzah. That was very exciting. I went through the scrap bin here and found a little bit. I have a little bit left. I have exactly enough to get the foresleeves done. I might be able to eke a pouch out of it, perhaps, if I need to. But, you know, it's scraps. We're good. So I should have enough to do small foresleeves. I'm definitely going to need to piece it because the pattern is set on a fold so that it becomes like a bowl shape, I guess, like this. And I cannot fit a full folded piece. So I'm going to try to strategically place my piecing to line up with some slashes. I hadn't planned on doing slashes. I was just going to do a straight, very plain foresleeve with some of the leftover ouches, potentially, and some piping and things. And then once I realized that I wouldn't be able to get it all in two cuts, I figured some piecing would be in order. So we're going to try that. What I'll need to do first, I believe, is cut it in flat lining. Once I've cut it in flat lining, I can kind of map out where I want the piecing to go, and then we'll cut it in the fashion fabric last. I know that this gets piped. I think it gets piped. You have the option of piping. There's always an option for something. So ours is going to be the option of piping, and for that, I am a little stuck between gold piping and brown piping. I do have both, so I'll figure that out as we go. I don't have a lining yet, but I should have enough things in the studio for lining. What else do we need for this? Fabric, flat lining, lining. Oh, the puffs. My shirt is made, my undershirt, the shirt that I'm wearing with this, that may or may not be the cropped shirt. I do have some other vaguely 16th century shirts, not necessarily based upon the smock that is in both the Tudor tailor and Margot Anderson. I've Frankensteined a number of shirts before. I know I talked about that in an earlier video. So, but I think most of them are made of linen. I think I'm probably just going to use some linen scraps to do the little puffs that come out of the foresleeve, so that'll be fine. I then have to find the box that has the linen in it. Actually, it might be... No, I have no idea. I labeled some of them, though, so I'll find it pretty quickly. Yeah, so I think that's it. I didn't want to use all of the ouches, and we'll talk about this later, I'm sure, because I want to save a few for whichever head wear I decided to go with. I don't know if it's going to be which kind of hood it's going to be. That's where I am. I don't know. I want to try a gable or English hood, depending on who we're talking about, where we're talking about, when we're talking about. But I think I'd like to try a gable hood. So we'll see. I did kind of want to use the ouches in that. So we'll see how many we have. I might be able to just kind of wing it. I might be able to order some more. I could order more, of course, but I don't want to kind of run too close waiting on shipping. So, yeah, we're just going to get started. I'm tired. I've got my water here. It is hot. I'm going to have to turn on the air conditioning, so this may end up being a voiceover. We'll see. Hi, team. It's perhaps been about 4 days since my last update, and that's okay. Today is Sunday, September 12th? Yes, 2021. I practiced that beforehand. And I made the first of 2 Foresleeves. Very exciting. Again, this is kind of pulling from scraps. So I wanted to make one up first to make sure that it was going to work and that I have enough materials, which I did, as long as I don't screw up the second one. So we're going to get to work on that now. Yeah. So I've made Foresleeves before. I don't know if I mentioned that, but I decided I wanted to add the puffs. I have a bag full of scraps, which I will show you, of linen, and I had to make up some of the pieces. I primarily pulled from Margot Anderson once I realized that I didn't want to do the jumping back and forth thing again between the 2 sources. So yeah, there were a couple pattern pieces missing. Probably my fault because I've made this before, but I don't believe I made it. I didn't make the last set of Foresleeves with the pullings out in the sleeve itself. I only did the ones here at the bottom. So I don't know where the pattern piece is. Luckily, in the Margot Anderson costuming pattern group, Margot Anderson pattern costuming group. Yeah. Anyway, it's a Facebook group. If you have the patterns, you should definitely be in that group because they answer a lot of questions that are very helpful. If you have lost a pattern piece or you're not sure if the pattern piece came, or if you have an older version of the patterns and something may have changed, Margot herself will put addendums and file attachments and things in there. So it's really great. And they can help to explain things in, for example, the techniques manual, if that's an issue for you. I have the older manuals. And I do have newer patterns as well. So I've got both the old kind of versions and the newer versions and the historical stuff in there. So that's great. Anyway, but the pullings out for this part of the sleeve, there was a pattern piece that she included in the group. So I was able to get that. For the pullings out at the bottom, I didn't have a pattern piece for that either. So I made one based on the Tudor tailor. So that's where I did kind of insert a little extra help there. And I will hopefully show you that process now. Okay, kids. So just to recap, I have already cut out the pieces. I have the fashion fabric, the flat lining fabric, which is just some pieced canvas, because again, I am running out of canvas. And then the lining fabric, which is generally called lining fabric. I didn't go with any kind of silk or cotton or linen. I had a bin of old lining fabrics, like the kind you would get in like a off the rack jacket, I guess. But I had a bunch of those from a fabric donation, and they match the fashion fabric, so that's what we're using. This gown specifically is being worn indoors in the cooler months or whatever. I have no expectation of being around a fire, and if I do, that's my business. So natural fabrics are not coming into play here. But anyway, enough about the fabrics. Actually, this fabric, I'm not going to burn test it, but it's pretty close to a cotton, slightly poly damask. I've used it before. It made it just fine through a 10-hour day at the fair. So whatever, not concerned about that at all. That's enough about the fabrics. These were the pattern pieces. What I did is I just made my own pattern piece using my arm measurement, arm length measurement, which matches the size 2 on the Margot Anderson pattern. And then I used the size 22 width I'm sorry, yes, width, which was my bicep measurement. And I don't know that there's any proportional measurement between the Foresleeves and the size chart in the manual, but that's what I used, and I think it turned out just fine. This fits my sleeve, or fits my arm rather, well enough. I know that there's going to be a cuff here, again, because I've used these before, and I can't find that original pattern piece that I cut, but it does go up to my elbow. I didn't cut much off here when I graded the edge and wrapped it in bias tape. So this is the edge of the pattern piece, and then this is folded up 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And it falls, you know, again, we were working within a set width of scrap fabrics here. So the small fore sleeve from the pattern worked out just fine. Again, using the short arm length and the wider arm width. So that's how I got those pattern pieces. And then for the puffs, which I will bring back over, for the puffs, I had to make my own kind of slashes, which you'll see as we go through the process. I had the printed pattern addendum, I guess, the pattern piece that should have been in here. It probably got cut and tossed with the rest of the pattern scraps, so that's perfectly fine. I was able to print this out without an issue at 100% size, and it made puffs that I'm quite happy with. You know, it's linen, they look like a sleeve, it's the same fabric that I used for my actual linen shirt, so yeah, so that's going to be something we use a little bit later. I also had to make my own, based on that puff sizing, I made my own fore sleeve slash. Now in the Tudor Tailor, these are actually kind of squared at the bottom, so they look more like that, rather than being pointed like it is at the top. I didn't bother. I wanted to stick to the Margot Anderson since, you know, again, my brain is broken. I don't want to jump back and forth between patterns anymore. I just want to get this project done. And I copied, this is just a little bit of duct tape with some paper. I drew it on the paper first, and then I put duct tape on the back so that I wouldn't A, lose it, or B, tear it while I'm trying to trace it a million times. So, yes, so then I took a piece of just sketch paper, wax paper, whatever it is that I picked up, and I put that down on my pattern piece, my fabric that was cut out, and kind of measured generally where I wanted it to be. I found the center of the fore sleeve itself, put that down about where it should be, leaving enough seam allowance here, and then also enough space to put the ouches in, right? So after all that was determined, I made a template that I can use for this one because I knew this was going to come up, so that everything will be, you know, pretty much symmetrical when I get to that part of the process. So we have those pattern pieces. Also over here, this is just some scrap ribbon that's already been cut and measured, cut and burned on the ends because it's like, I don't know, nylon or polyester ribbon. I don't know. It came out of my scrap bin, so it's here. It's being used. That will tie the sleeves to the gown sleeves so that I don't have to worry about them slipping off, which my last set of fore sleeves didn't, but, you know, it's always a concern. So that will come up a little bit later. This is the bias tape that's going to go along the inside edge of the fore sleeve when we get to that part. This is some, oh, what is this called? I've already lost my words. This does not bode well for the rest of the day. Not bias tape, piping. This is the piping that I'll be using along the outside edge of the fore sleeve. And I chose that because the ouches are gold, and there's a bit of gold ribbon in there as well. Again, this is kind of based on not only the ouches, but the gown itself. As long as the fabric doesn't arrive in a state, the gown is going to be a yellow gold. So I wanted to kind of get a head start on that. Hopefully this will tie the sunflower, dryad, whatever theme together a bit. I also have some more findings in here that you will see later. In addition to the ouches, there are some... You know what? I'll show them to you later because there were some adjustments that had to be made in order to get some more finery on here and to close the sleeves without them looking too busy. So, and then the final piece is this huge bag of scraps. These are all linen scraps, primarily from the bolt of linen that I've been using for a while now, and I'm coming down to I'm coming down to the final yards of that as well. Again, gonna need a supply run, but I have a bag full of ready-to-use scraps. This is where I got the puffs from, which you will see because I have some pretty sizable kind of end pieces in here. This is also where I got the pullings out on the finished sleeve, which was a little bit more difficult, but if I need to piece it together to get the length that I need to cover this whole outside edge, that will be fine. As you'll see a little bit later, it's going to need to be doubled. It's going to need to be wide and then doubled and then sewn into one side. So I think we're ready to begin. There is a fair amount of hand sewing in this. I will probably not get it done in one day. We're already pretty late into the afternoon, but I want to get most of it done so that if I do have to do a bunch of hand sewing, that can be done elsewhere in the house. So here we go. Okay, so first up, we pin. We pin the flat lining to the fashion fabric down the center and then along the outside edges so that I can control it a little bit better and reduce the bubbling when it's going through the machine. And then it's back, and I take all the pins out. I use just a normal stitch for this, not too short. It's going to be sandwiched in with piping and lining and all that stuff. So I'm just cutting off the excess to make sure that everything is properly lined up. Then I fold it in half and put that slash template down. I mark the tops and bottoms and then trace along the outside edge of the slash template again to get the rest of the puffs on the foresleeve. Next we have to do the slash lining. So this would ideally be one big piece and I just pieced it. Just pinning some things in place to make sure I'm all lined up and I've got enough space. I then pin everything down. Okay, and we're back. We have stitched along the slash line, and now we're going to separate the lining so that we can cut the slashes and pull the lining through. And this is really useful, I promise. You don't want to just put your puffs in without any lining. And if anything, comes through, you want to be able to see the lining and not the flat lining fabric, I think is what I'm trying to say. So then after everything's been pulled through, and I believe I pressed the lining in place to kind of crisp up that seam edge, then I go through and pin down the lining, making sure that it's not going to roll back to the front so that I can catch stitch it all along the outside. This takes a little while, only because I am trying not to catch the fashion fabric in the catch stitch. You're really just going by feel. It doesn't take terribly long, but you have to do it for all four sides, for all three slashes. That's done! Yay! The magic of a fast video. So now we're looking for appropriately sized puffs from the linen. Just go through my bag and I need to find 3. I do a little rough cut on them and then I'm just going to trace them with some chalk. I'm going to be cutting to the inside. This part isn't going to be seen, so you won't see my chalk markings. I prefer chalk over like pencil or heat erasable because because I do. I don't know. So then we cut everything out, and the next step is going to be gathering these ovals. I am doing it by machine. It doesn't take too long. I could do it by hand, but we are very far past doing everything by hand. So then I think I put all of the gathering stitches up at the top of each oval, and I just pull them through and pin everything down. I'm pulling those gathering stitches to fit first, and then I pin everything down. Make sure the gatherers are pretty even. This is, again, you're just kind of doing a mock shirt pull through. So it doesn't need to be perfect. Shirts never stay where we put them, but then I pull out my hand sewing supplies and settle in. I am going around each puff and slash, stitching them all to the outer fashion fabric. So I am using a matching, I think this is an embroidery thread, and it might even be a machine embroidery thread, but it's what I had on hand and it happened to match the fashion fabric perfectly. So that's what we're using. And it's basically invisible. So then we go back into the bag of scraps because we need to find a very large piece for the pullings out. I do not have a very large piece for this sleeve. I think I just lucked out with the first sleeve, and that's fine, but I also don't want to cut a new length of linen just for this. So I pieced everything together by machine, pressed everything down, and then I get it all ready to attach to the foresleeve. I'm not sure that I like the edging, which you'll see here in a minute. It's gathered on the long edge, again, because we're doing like a mock sleeve of a shirt. So it's going to look gathered and kind of floofy. But then along the ends, we're going to be gathering that too, and you'll see how that looks in just a minute. So we pin everything down. I've already put the piping on. I think I missed that step. So the piping goes down after I've done all of the puff slash bits. I just put piping along the outside edge of the entire sleeve, and then I put the pullings out down with the machine as well. And then we put the lining on. So this is the last little bit of our sandwich here. Everything is right side to right side. We're pinning it very meticulously because there's a lot of layers to get through, and I don't want to, have any bit that should be on the inside exposed. So we pin, and we pin, and we pin. Okay, and then it's all stitched down by machine like magic. I am trimming along the edges and clipping those corners, and then we are going to do the very satisfying pulling through. And when I did pull this through, I ran over to the ironing board and pressed it along that piped edge just to make it a little crisper, because we're going to have to join all of that together as well. So next, we need to gather up those ends of the pullings out. I didn't do it this way before. I'm not really sure what I did on my other set of foresleeves, but it was not this. I think I stitched the ends of the pulling out into the inside of the foresleeve, and I think I like that way better because I end up, which you'll see at the end, with this little kind of gathered edge that doesn't make technical sense if this is supposed to be a shirt coming through the sleeve. So I might just kind of hand tack those down to the inside when the project's done. We'll see what it looks like. So here I am with some just leftover bias tape that I had from another project. I chose the white because it shouldn't be seen anyway, and I didn't have any green on hand to match the rest of the fashion fabric. I don't have enough of the fashion fabric itself to make a self bias tape. So we're going with the white. It looks fine. I actually like that kind of pop of color, or lack of color, absence of color, sure. So then I turn everything to the inside and pin it down because we are going to hand stitch this in place after grating a little bit of the seam that wasn't quite right. And we're pinning, and we're pinning, and we're done pinning, and now it's time to hand stitch, I think. Oh, we have to keep cleaning it with the the lint roller there. So for this, I'm just using a, I don't know what this is. What is this going to be? Hem stitch. I think this is a hem stitch that I'm going to use. but I'm securing it to the end very seriously, apparently. There we go. So we're going to hem stitch all along this bias tape, taking out pins as I go. I bled on this. I bled on this a fair amount. I don't know why. I think I was just having a weird night. And right here I'm just showing you how I try to pick the basted stitches along that inside edge with the seam ripper, because they're going to come off later. And then I use the lint roller to pull all of those threads up. That only works if you remember to pull the bobbin thread out. But once you remember to do that, it's very easy. Lint rollers are great. So now we are coming down to the last bits here. Just matching it to the first sleeve that I did to make sure that I put the points and ouches in the correct spots. Trying it on again just to make sure that I know where the hook and eye are going to go, and then I mark those with pins as well. And we are going to hand stitch this in place with some, I think I used just a nice thick white thread for this. And I tried not to catch the pullings out so that I can still kind of adjust them if they get out of place. I didn't want to kind of commit to having very full pullings out there. Now, a couple of the ouches, the pearls, 3 pearls popped off of 3 ouches, so I just grabbed some super glue and use that to put the pearl in place.
Hi team! Today is Monday, September 13th, 2021, and we're taking a quick break from me sewing the ouches onto the sleeve to open some fabric. This just arrived. I ordered it a couple of weeks ago, I think, from maybe fabric.com. Not really sure. Not important. What's important is I don't know if I'm going to like it. And if I do kind of like it, then I'll, we'll roll with that. But we are also in a time crunch because we're about 3 weeks out from the event that I want to wear this to. So if it doesn't work, I don't know what we're going to do. Not important. Here we go. All right. I don't like opening these because even though I have my handy dandy box cutter, because you shouldn't be using scissors to open boxes and other such things, I'm not quite sure if they wrapped the fabric in addition to just wrapping the fabric, right? So I don't know what it looks like on the inside and I don't want to cut the fabric. So scissors might actually be a better idea here. Oh, good. Okay. I just barely nicked the edge, so we're good. And it peels off pretty easily, so now I will get out my scissors. Boop. All right. So far, so good. It's kind of a gold. I think I was going for like a gold yellow, and this hopefully will work with the green. And then I'll basically be a sunflower. So think Iridessa from Disney Fairies, yeah? Again, not really, this isn't, didn't really have a theme going into this project. I very loosely went with the dryad theme because I liked the idea of the green and brown in the kirtle, but I didn't know what I was going to do for the rest of the gown. And then I realized, oh, well, if I get gold or a yellow, I can be like a sunflower, which is Iridessa's flower. So this looks very promising. I've actually had a gold yellow gown before. It was my first, probably my second Rennie gown. So, oh, this is really lovely. My next concern would probably just be the drape. This is really pretty, and it's not really showing up on the camera, but I like it very much. And there are 10 yards here, but it's 118 inches wide, so I should have more than enough. So it's pretty light, which means that the cotton broadcloth that I picked up should do well for lining. And I might do the edge lining and the hem lining in a slightly different color because the, I think it's right here, this tan is what's going to go on the most of the lining for the gown. And if I can find something fancy to put in there, then we'll have that. But preliminary, I think this is going to be great.
And now just to finish up, everything is in place. It's very exciting. So now we're going to do the hook and die. I just pulled some out of the stash. Tip, if you have a bunch of either older costumes that no longer fit, or you've got just random clothes or things you picked up at the thrift store, before you decide to toss it or pass it on or just, tear it to bits and throw it in the trash, get all of your metal bits off. Older costumes, vintage items, that sort of thing. You want to repurpose all of your metal bits, all of your buttons. I have seam ripped underwire out of bras before. Old nursing bras of mine had very handy clips because the cups have to come down for feeding or pumping, and those clips have been fantastic for skirts and capes and that sort of thing. So always reclaim your findings when you can. You can get them off of old purses, book bags where the zippers have broken. Just get rid of the rest of the book bag if you don't need it. But remember to grab those buttons and clasps and the little parachute clips and things. Always kind of get that stuff back and build up your notion stash as well as your fabric stash. And here I'm just securing the hook and die as well as possible, going down to the flat lining. I don't want to just hook the lining because you'll be able to see it if it pulls too much. And it fits. So the only thing we have to think about now is the cuff that's going to go in there, but it doesn't add a bunch of bulk. It's just a linen cuff. Now, the issue I had was that the ouches didn't quite match up, and those two that were left over were originally going to go in the corner of the foresleeve. That didn't work out. It looked too bulky, so I went through my jewelry findings, because I have a cabinet of jewelry findings. I came up with some items that matched the existing color palette, I guess, and I made these little kind of dangles. I guess you could call them an aglet. They're not really an aglet. They're purely decorative. They're not going to be laced through anything, but that's what they remind me of. And I was able to find a portrait from the era that had these really fancy dangly bits on the ends of the puffs and slashes and things, so that was pretty cool. So I just kind of strung those together on a piece of ribbon, burned the ends, and then attached them down to the corner. They kind of mask that weird gathered bit of the pullings out that I haven't actually tacked down yet, so that was nice, but they just make a little jeweled finish there, and I think they'll look nice draped across the edge of the cuff when we get to that part of the project. And these are secured down and then just tied into a little bow, which will probably come apart, but it won't come off, so it doesn't matter. The eyelets to lace the foresleeves onto the gown on the inside, done with my normal kind of eyelet process here. I use the bone eyelet to keep the hole open and consistent. These are not very big eyelets, but I am using a embroidery. It's the same embroidery thread that I used to secure the edges of the slashes in the sleeve, and I just tripled that up and made my eyelets, and then I lace it with that white lace from before, and we're all done. I absolutely love them, and I cannot wait to get started on the gown. Thanks for hanging out.